What current, socially acceptable practice will future generations see as backwards or immoral? Using massive amounts of plastic to make a bunch of unnecessary crap. I really hope this extremely polarizing political climate is seen as backwards and immoral in the future. Starting off life in massive debt. 50% of Americans that get cancer will go broke in less than 2 years. Social media witch hunts. I think one day some future generation will think, can you believe they used to just let people drive these multi-ton metal boxes at high speeds? They just accepted car accidents and traffic as a fact of life. I think this even now when I'm doing 80 to 85 miles per hour on the highway and I look over and the driver next to me is doing the same speed while looking at their phone. For-profit healthcare, education, prisons and infrastructure. The main goal of our lives is to have a decent job. The only reason we strive to have a decent job is so that we can live. In my country, arranged marriages. Posting pictures of your children on social media. Sexualizing children, i.e., beauty pageants for children. Going to a circus. Keeping an animal in a tiny cage his whole life just for a 30 minutes show should be a crime. The factory farming, commercial fishing, and dairy industries. Probably the movement of be yourself in the aspect of eat whatever you want and there will be no consequences. The lack of a drive to be physically healthy in many people is alarming. Combine this with the 80s war on fat, promotion of sugar and you have people getting diabetes in their 30s. If the trend continues, circumcision. Normalization of obesity. Our dependence on non-renewable fossil fuels. Medicine for profit, police killings, no vacation time, war on drugs and profit prisons, corporations running things, student debt. Gerrymandering. Opening parenthesis closing parenthesis. Hyper-politicizing everything. Gotcha debates where the aim is just to win the argument rather than actually being right or making sensible points. Encouraging children to transition. Treatment of animals bred for slaughter. It's already happening, but it's not to the point where everyone is repulsed by it yet. Disposable plastic anything. The way we choose politicians, too many of them are completely incompetent and have no reason to be in politics. On both sides, left or right. Allowing children to eat so much sugar. Trans dudes beating the shit out of women in women's sport. Hey look. I can't qualify for my high school team but now that I identify as a woman I'm going to the Olympics. Driving with a cell phone. Once we all have self-driving cars and the only time you drive yourself is for taking that sweet hot rod out on a Saturday, people will be horrified that we all drove around checking Instagram while going 80 miles per hour on the freeway. The lack of free healthcare in America. The whole "my children need to identify as gender-neutral" thing. For God's sake, let kids be kids and decide about their identity later. It just puts a confusing mental burden on them. Giving religious organizations tax-exempt status. Maternity leave of 12 weeks or less. I go back to work next week, sad face. Pushing gender fluidity on kids. Dumping sick people on the street because they don't have the money to pay for medical help. Homelessness and poverty. The modern-day mantra that you have to work to earn your keep and the poor are morally deficient moochers that deserve their lot in life is going to go out the window once most jobs are automated and more people are unemployed than not. Pooping indoors. Eating meat. Influencers, or in other words, people expressing an opinion or worse, being paid to express an opinion with the intent to influence others. If I am looking to buy a new product that I am not familiar with, I will look for honest reviews. Unfortunately, honest reviews are virtually impossible to find today. They are either written by the manufacturer themselves, or by a paid customer influencer. The only honest reviews are the negative ones by pissed-off customers, but those are also not reliable, since they could be coming from someone who has been paid by a competitor, or just someone who happened to get that one faulty product that slipped through the QA checks. The idea that it is correct and sustainable for the current generation to borrow from future generations to consume now. This is a relatively new trend. Perhaps 100 years in the most developed countries. Only beginning in many developing countries. This is why we don't see the horrible consequences, yet. Traditional models of economic development were all about savings and deferred consumption. Future generations had more than past generations, and it was assumed that this is how they take care of their parents, by having slightly more than they would on their own. There was a general consensus that life is hard and that giving our children a better one is our duty. I eat half as much so that you and your children can eat it all. People were happy that they had it better than their parents and attempted to control their greed for the sake of their children. Present models of economic development are all about present short-term consumption, which is financed with money creation. But money creation means that the wealth still has to come from somewhere, and it does, from the future. More money creation now stimulates the economy for greater investment in the future, which will increase production so that the extra debt can be paid. Unfortunately, because there is no way to know how much you can borrow from the future, it leads to greed operating without restraint and the future generations having less than past generations and being increasingly more burdened by economic cost of that which was consumed. The result is that I want my house and my car and my vacations and my pension at 60, and you can get a student loan and get a job and not live in my house because I didn't do it when I was your age. Except you did it because you borrowed from the future, that is my future. Almost nothing of the way we now pay for things in the long term is ethical. The most obvious example is the environment. We are consuming now by leaving environmental debt for our children, but the same is true of welfare as pensions and medical care. We have fewer and fewer children, and we both live longer and have greater demands and expectations. This means that our children have to both work harder to have the same standard of living that we had, and in the end they are loaded with debt to pay for our welfare. This is not obvious yet because we still keep deferring the deadline with more and more money creation and various financial inventions, but sooner or later enough people in the world will get on the same consume now, pay later scheme that it will crack because there will be nowhere to borrow from or nobody left to exploit. And nobody will remember what it meant to just work for a better future for your children. Everyone will be angry that they can't have it as good as their parents. And remember, the natural way of human society is not to have it as good as your parents but better. Why live otherwise? Why let others live? This is how wars begin. Chemotherapy. As targeted genomics advances, we'll look back on chemo the way we currently look back on mercury-based medicine. Circumcision, I hope. Male genital mutilation, and no one bats an eye. Being able to abuse the shit out of people online without any repercussions. Not using the metric system. Animal agriculture is pretty horrid if you look into it literally at all, so hopefully that. Mutilating children's genitals. Gender fluidity. The two-party political system, campaigning laws in America. Nothing gets done because everyone in office represents a party instead of their actual beliefs. Handshakes. Most of you will not believe me now, but there will be a time when you look back at the current intersectional feminist and social justice movement and won't believe how you supported an obviously psychopathic and manipulative ideology without seeing it for what it is. It's screamingly obviously if you look closely too, which makes it so scary that so many can't see it. Thanks for watching. What would be your response? Leave it in the comments and see what the others say. Please also like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Until next time, take care.